It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Very interesting piece, to say the least. Very interesting piece yesterday in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. It is a piece by Michael Wickline on the relationship between Asa Hutchinson, the governor, and his nephew, Jim Hendren, the president pro temp of the Senate. The headline, for new Arkansas Senate leader, politics is in the blood. Subheadline, he, governor, are kin, but can disagree. What an odd subheadline. So he and the governor are kin, but can disagree. Now, the only reason you would put a subheadline like that, will you scroll up? Scroll up. I want people to see this subheadline. The only reason you would have a subheadline like this is if there were people who believe that that doesn't happen. You understand what you got to understand? You understand what happens. Obviously, if you have to point out that they can have disagreements, then there are some people that think that they don't. Or the natural human tendency would be to think that family relations are thicker than politics. You know what I'm saying? That there's more of a family loyalty there, and that loyalty is going to dictate what you do, because you got to see people at Christmas or Thanksgiving or wherever, right? I don't know how they divide their time up. I know, most people go one or the other. Anyway. So that's the first thing that stuck out to me. Why the motivation? First of all, why do you even need to write this piece? Well, because Senator Hendren is, he's the president pro temp of the Senate, and just so happens to also be the governor's nephew. I actually have said before that it's very likely that, Senator Hendren being the president pro temp of the Senate very much undermines the integrity of the body in terms of being a separate and equal branch of government. In a lot of ways, the Arkansas Senate may very well be a member of the executive branch now, at least for the time being. And that's the danger here. This article goes out of its way to make sure that you know that these two, while they are related, can have disagreements, which means, because this article has been written, that they're now above reproach. That is the goal of an article like this. Matter of fact, scroll down to the very bottom, Joe. Full disclosure, I have no idea who wrote these comments. We have a commenter on this is on the Gazette's website yesterday at 12:17. Somebody writes puff piece, and then somebody named Foghorn writes, quote, "Oh, for the love of God, how stupid do they think we are?" When it comes to, a piece like this. A lot of people scratching their head like, what is this? Now, let's see. Michael Wickline writes, during the past 6 years, he served as the Senate Republican Majority Leader as co-chairman of 3 legislative task forces that recommended changes for public schools, state employees, health insurance programs, the Medicaid program, and the tax code. Now, folks, if you've been following politics at all, it is an objective fact that the reason that Senator Hendren was picked to be the head of those task forces is because he's the governor's nephew. That's the reason he was picked, is because it led the parade where the governor wanted the parade led. It's not even arguable. It's not even arguable. It's a way to set the goalposts where the goalposts want to be, or set the Overton window. The last 4 years in this state, we have governed by task forces, which is legislatively. And again, I don't see how you can argue the point. It's a lot easier to control and lobby 15 people on a task force than it is to lobby 135 legislators. that are in session that want to deal with the problem and debate the problem now. If you, let's just be clear here, okay? 100% certain. If you didn't have a task force, if you didn't have all these task forces, and you literally just left the sausage making up to a 135-member body and let the chips fall where they may, we would have demonstrably different results right now than we do in terms of the policies, laws that we're living under. Period. 100% chance. The task forces are a way to subdue an otherwise active and imaginative and creative legislature that want to actively and proactively solve problems for the people, whether I agree with some of their motivations or disagree or what, that doesn't matter. The bottom line is there have been there's example after example after example where legislators have ideas. Even legislators in the establishment have ideas. They want to try to get something done, and they get Johnny sweep the legs out from under them, and it gets put in a task force where Jim Hendren is the chair and the head, and everything is steered the way the governor, what is most appropriate or more appropriate to the governor. And, this article cites, well, no, they disagreed. The governor wanted a 4-year tax plan, and they recommended a 3-year. Do you really think they care either way? Do you really think in the grand scheme of things it matters? No, like I said, the goalposts are set where they are. Okay, let's keep going here. There's a lot of good things. Now, he actually addresses this. Let's see here. Quote, clearly there was a concern about me being pro temp, Hendren said. Wickline writes, senators voted in March to choose him as president pro temp elect after the Senate Republican caucus voted to nominate him over Senator Jimmy Hickey, Republican Texarkana. Quote, is it too much power in one family, and am I going to just hurt the independence of the legislature versus the executive branch? Clearly, most of the sitting didn't agree with that because they know me, and I guarantee the governor knows me, and the family relationship is very important. Or otherwise, I would just interject here, maybe the rest of the Senate that voted for you knows the governor. Maybe it's not so much about knowing you, Senator Hendren. Maybe it's more about the rest of those. Like, they saw what happened to Linda Collins Smith and Brian King. You think that might have something to do with it? Maybe, just a little bit. Let's see, keeps going. Hendren said that in some ways having the relationship, meaning uncle and nephew, that he has with Hutchinson makes it easier for him to tell the governor when I think he is doing something not great. No, not wrong, but not great. Or when I disagree with him. And believe me, that has occurred many times, but it occurs in private. Sometimes we work it out. Sometimes I don't support what he's doing, or he won't support something that I am doing, but we have the kind of relationship where we laugh about it, and we don't take it personal. I've got some frustration from the governor as well about my stubbornness, but we have tremendous respect for each other, I think. All right. Then Wickline talks about Governor Mike Beebe. Former Democratic Governor Mike Beebe was asked about the relationship between nephew Hendren and Uncle Hutchinson. And he said this, quote, I think they were philosophically aligned, notwithstanding their relationship. Beebe described Hendren as level-headed, objective, pragmatic, and pleasant to deal with when Beebe was governor. Democrat Senator Joyce Elliott says of Jim Hendren and the relative situation, I don't make much of it because none of us get to choose our relatives. All of us might have chosen differently if we were choosing who our mothers and dads may be. So that's part of who Jim is. He can't help that. He can't change that, meaning he can't change who his uncle is. And then there's a quote here. Michael Wickline reached out to Brenda Vassar-Taylor. And, of course, Brenda is the co-founder of the Conduit organizations, and you're listening right now to Conduit News Radio. She says that they have disagreed with Hendren and Hutchinson about Arkansas's version, or Wickline writes that we've disagreed with Medicaid expansion. Quote, she said Hendren is military-minded. Now, keep in mind, Senator Hendren is a colonel in the Arkansas Air National Guard. She said Hendren is military-minded, Quote, he is used to following the directions of the commander, and I believe the governor is the person he takes directions from. It's not a personal attack, end quote. But Hendren said, quote, Brenda doesn't understand the military mindset, end quote, which he said supports the Constitution and accomplishes the mission without violating their oaths as officers. Vassar-Taylor said she hopes that Hendren is successful at improving the integrity of the Senate. She said she is glad that he persuaded fellow senators to authorize video streaming meetings of that body and its committee starting this session. I wholeheartedly agree about both of those things, the integrity of the Senate and the streaming. That's a big deal. The fact that the Senate is now going to be streaming their committee meetings and their with video so we can keep an eye on them is a big deal. That is an accomplishment. Whether you agree on that issue or disagree on other wherever you fall down, that is a good thing, and credit needs to be given where credit is due there. Then Michael Wickline goes on and talks about Senator Jeremy Hutchinson. That's the governor's other nephew being indicted on 12 counts of wire and tax fraud, and then the other lawmakers, and how the integrity of the Senate is in question here. It really, truly is. And whether or not they can police themselves, I don't think so. I don't really think they can police themselves, because they could have been policing themselves this entire time. There needs to be, new laws that don't oppress the people, but actually make it harder for legislators to, for example, be an attorney, represent clients before the legislature, but having the loopholes that they have, passing bills for clients as an attorney and getting paid extra money to do it. That certainly is one of the biggest problems that we've seen, and it's been slowly unveiled over the last couple of years. But, yeah, it's very, very interesting. The idea that this whole article, by the way, again, it's trying to defend a perception that must already be out there. I want you to understand me clearly here. The fact that this is the subject of the article is, yeah, they're related, yeah, they're family, yeah, they're uncle and nephew, yeah, one's in the executive branch and one's the head of, one half of 1/3 of the legislative branch. Don't worry. They disagree sometimes. That, to me, says that there's already a perception out there, or there might be in the coming legislative battles that are going to start next Monday, that there's going to be possibly some credibility problems, that there's going to be some things happen that might be described as just formalities because we already have this familiar relationship, and so it's going to be more of a dog and pony show. I'm just saying how that perception must already be out there, or you wouldn't have an article like this being written. And the other point of view, by the way, the criticism is in the sub-headline. The criticism is already there. And then they get to, Brenda Vassar-Taylor's quote here that says, we think he's military-minded and he's just used to following directions from a commander, and I believe that's what he's doing. In this context, the governor is the commanding officer. Again, that is taking the sub-headline and making it more of a specific criticism. But if you actually read the first half of the article before you ever even get to this quote, it's clear that there's already people out there talking, and I've been one of them, certainly, that, the independence of the Arkansas Senate, everything, and this is my point is, unfortunately, yeah, you can't help who your relatives are, but sometimes just for the perception of things, you have to bow out. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this article wouldn't even be necessary if Jim Hendren wasn't the president pro temp of the Senate. You understand what I mean? So everything they do, the fact that they had to write an article like this, means that everything they do is going to be potentially scrutinized where the fix is in. And The only reason this is happening is because of, he's the uncle and he's the nephew. It just is what it is. And the mainstream media, the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, and others, every time they mention Jim Hendren, and every time they mention Asa Hutchinson in the same story, they rightfully so point out that the two are related because you have to. Anyway, very interesting piece. I actually think the fact that it was written at all means that there's a lot of people out there questioning what this does to the makeup of the Arkansas Senate in terms of their independence from the executive branch.